On the Shaanxi festival, my good friend and I went out for a spring outing, but our carriage got stuck in a traffic jam on the official road. From the carriage next to ours, I heard the voice of my fiancé. Xu Jiao is just an ordinary woman. How could she ever compare to the county princess, who is as lovely as the moon and as beautiful as a flower? From inside that neighboring carriage came a woman's coquettish laugh, while my heart plummeted rapidly to the bottom of a chasm. My friend Xu Mingming was about to get out of the carriage to find out what was going on. I held her back. Mingming was absolutely livid. You supported him through his studies, and now he's clinging to someone of higher status just to put you down. What an ungrateful wretch. I'm going to slap him silly today. I smiled. If it really is him, there's no need for you to dirty your own hands. Song Yin and I had been childhood sweethearts. He was bright, diligent, gentle and humble, a promising young man whom everyone praised to the skies, with a future full of infinite possibilities. I couldn't bring myself to believe that the intelligent Song Yin would ever betray me. After all, he had lived off me, eaten my food and worn my clothes since we were children. He had known since he was a boy what the price of betraying me would be. Was the county princess, that higher branch he was clinging to, really worth it? I lifted the curtain of my carriage and glanced at the one next to ours, my expression turning icy cold. That carriage had been bought and furnished by me. The horses pulling it had also been purchased at great expense. Just then, the curtain of the neighboring carriage was lifted too, revealing a bright, beautiful face, and behind that face, a hand I knew all too well. It was Song Yin. I rubbed my temples tiredly. What are we going to do? Xu Mingming asked. You can ask Song Yin that later, I replied, raising an eyebrow. Xu Mingming threw her arms around me. I knew it. Jiao Jiao would never submit to such humiliation. I told my carriage woman to drive our cart directly in front of theirs, blocking the entire road. Then I had her sneak away and mix in with the other carriages in the traffic jam. Before long, a chorus of angry shouts erupted behind our carriage. The carriages at the back were yelling at the one in front. What a lively commotion it was. I sat motionless inside, listening calmly to the chorus of complaints. After about the time it took to finish a cup of tea, the Qingyang County princess and Song Yin got out of their carriage together. Song Yin rapped on the side of my cart and called out loudly, "Excuse me, please move out of the way. Your carriage is blocking the road. Can't you even drive properly? Do you have no manners at all?" The Qingyang County princess snapped. The official road was crowded with people, all craning their necks to watch the spectacle. After all, both Song Yin and the Qingyang County princess were well-known figures in the capital. "I apologize," I said, stepping out of the carriage and standing on the driver's platform. "My carriage woman is suddenly feeling unwell. She'll be right back." Eyes from all around turned to stare at me. Someone gasped in recognition. "It's Mistress Xu." I let out a gasp of my own. "Song Yin, I thought you were going to handle some business with the young marquis. What are you doing here?" I shifted my gaze to the county princess's face, looking utterly shocked. "Your Highness." Song Yin's face turned deathly pale in an instant. He looked from the county princess to me, his usual quick wit failing him for once as he struggled to find a reply. "What's the problem with that?" the Qingyang County princess asked, folding her arms across her chest and glaring at me. "My friend and I are out for a spring outing. Do I need to report that to you?" There was no way the Qingyang County princess didn't know that Song Yin was already engaged to be married. I didn't get down from the carriage, looking down at the two of them from above. "Of course not, Your Highness. Your affairs are none of my business." But then I turned my body and fixed my eyes on Song Yin. "But I am asking my fiancé." The Qingyang County princess's face flushed bright red in an instant. From inside one of the nearby carriages came a burst of laughter. The young marquis had some urgent business come up suddenly, Song Yin said, stepping forward and lowering his voice to a whisper. "He asked me to accompany Her Highness on her outing instead." I didn't have time to tell you. Please don't make a scene. He wanted me to stop making a fuss, to save him from embarrassment and protect his precious future. And now I was the one being unreasonable. I raised an eyebrow. You and Her Highness, an unmarried man and an unmarried woman, spending time alone together like this is completely inappropriate. You should have come back to tell me at once, and asked me to come along with you. Song Yin's face turned as white as a sheet. The laughter from the surrounding crowd grew even louder. The people hiding inside their carriages were laughing without restraint. The Qingyang County princess's face was now as red as blood. Just then, a young man riding on horseback approached. He had delicate features and an air of noble elegance about him. Sitting high up on his horse, it was clear to anyone who saw him that he must be a person of extraordinary status. Let's clear the road first, the man said in a calm, quiet voice. His eyes landed on my face, lingering for a moment before shifting to the Qingyang County princess. Crown Prince brother, it wasn't me who blocked the road, it was her, the Qingyang County princess cried, rushing forward to throw herself at him, acting like a spoiled child now that she had found her savior. Too, I lowered my eyes respectfully, stepped down from the carriage and knelt to pay my respects. The surrounding crowd had already dropped to their knees in a sea of people. The Crown Prince told me to rise, then gestured for everyone else to stand up as well before turning his gaze back to the Qingyang County princess. I heard everything, the Crown Prince said, his tone even and calm. But there was a sharp glint in his eyes. I was greatly surprised. I hadn't expected the Crown Prince to refuse to take his own cousin's side. The Qingyang County princess realized that she wouldn't get any special treatment from him, and that continuing to argue would only make her look more ridiculous. She stamped her foot angrily, then turned and climbed back into her carriage. Song Yin bowed to the Crown Prince, shot me a quick glance, and was about to follow the county princess into her carriage when the Crown Prince spoke again. Scholar Song, you are a clever man. Go to the back of the traffic jam and help clear it up. Will you? Thank you for your hard work. Song Yin replied yes, Your Highness, with a pale face. The crowd fell silent. Only then did the Crown Prince turn his eyes to me, raising an eyebrow slightly. What are your plans now? I've lost all interest in our spring outing, Your Highness. I'll head back home at once, I replied. He nodded slightly, then pointed to one of his personal guards. You'd go drive her carriage, see that she gets home safely. I bowed deeply to thank him, then climbed back into my carriage. It wasn't until we had returned home safely and the Crown Prince's guard had left that Xu Mingming finally let out a long, relieved breath, whispering to me, I can't believe we ran into the Crown Prince. Do you think he saw right through you, that you blocked the road on purpose? He probably did, I replied calmly. But it doesn't matter, I did nothing wrong. Xu Mingming perked up again at that, talking about Song Yin with glee. Now his and the county princess's reputations are completely ruined. Just thinking about it makes me so happy. I smiled faintly. In truth, I had trusted Song Yin far too much. There had been plenty of signs of what he was up to long before this incident. I still remembered the rainy day not too long ago. I had gone to the academy to bring him an umbrella. I had visited the academy where he studied countless times before. 7 dormitory rooms in the back courtyard, 6 of them had been donated by me. The academy principal was deeply grateful to me. But what he didn't know was that I hadn't donated those rooms out of any great love for education. I had only done it because I was afraid that Song Yin wouldn't be comfortable living in the shabby old dorms. When I reached the door of his dorm room, I found 7 or 8 other students sitting inside. They didn't recognize me, but I recognized them. Who are you looking for? Yang Ling asked me, the admiration in his eyes completely undisguised. I'm looking for Song Yin. Is he here? He's in the master's study. He'll be back soon, Yang Ling replied, tilting his head to the side, the tips of his ears turning pink. Who are you to him? The other students stared at me. exchanging curious glances and silent guesses. My heart skipped a beat. So it was true, Song Yin had never breathed a word about me to anyone outside our circle. He had never mentioned our engagement at all. I'm his. I was about to say fiancé when Song Yin suddenly opened the door of the adjacent room. He froze when he saw me standing there. What are you doing here? I held up the umbrella in my hand. I was planning to stay overnight at the academy tonight, Song Yin said softly. You didn't have to make this trip specially. He glanced up at the darkening sky. It's getting late. Let me walk you back home. I nodded my head. Inside the dorm room, Yang Ling and the others began to hoot and holler, teasing Song Yin and asking who I was. I lingered by the door, watching Song Yin intently, waiting to hear how he would introduce me to them. She's my younger sister, Song Yin replied smoothly, without the slightest hesitation or pause. Stop making such a racket, all of you, you'll frighten her. The teasing and catcalls only grew louder. Someone asked when he had suddenly acquired a younger sister. Another one called out, how old is your sister, Song? Is she betrothed to anyone yet? Cut it out with your nonsense, Song Yin snapped, his face darkening as he silenced them. I nodded politely to the people inside the room, then turned and walked slowly along the covered corridor. Song Yin had told them I was his younger sister. So when I married him someday, how would he explain to his classmates and friends that he had married his own sister? Or, had he never intended to marry me at all? Miss Song. Yang Ling suddenly darted out from behind Song Yin, catching up to me in a hurry. His face was bright red as he looked at me, appearing flustered and nervous. My name is Yang Ling. I'm the son of Minister Yang from the Eastern Street, the young man stammered out. He shot me one last deep look, then turned and fled back into the dorm room, his face still burning bright red. I turned my head. Song Yin was standing behind me, looking completely stunned, his face as pale as death. I can find my own way home. Brother, there's no need for you to see me off, I said. Without even glancing at him again, I opened my umbrella and stepped out into the pouring rain. The beautiful dream that Song Yin and I had woven together should have shattered that rainy night. I had simply been deceiving myself all this time. 3. I more or less knew why Song Yin had never told anyone about our relationship. My father had passed away when I was 8 years old, leaving behind 2 tea shops. My mother had struggled to keep them running for 3 long years, but she had never had any head for business, so when I turned 11, I took over the family business myself. After a year of stumbling and fumbling my way through it, I finally got the hang of things, meeting with suppliers, training shop managers, traveling to other cities to inspect goods. Over the past 9 years, the number of shops in our family had grown from 2 to 36. My business had flourished and expanded, and I had transformed into a thoroughgoing, dyed-in-the-wool merchant. Merchants were wealthy, but they occupied a low position in the social hierarchy. Song Yin, on the other hand, already had one foot firmly planted in the officialdom. He was afraid that if he told people who I really was, his classmates would laugh at him. He was afraid that if he told people who I really was, he would be tainted by the stink of copper, despised by his mentor, the Grand Secretary, and thus doomed to never enter the ranks of the respected clean officials in the future. That night, Song Yin came to see me. I took out the jade pendant that symbolized our engagement and handed it back to him. You've made your choice. Now don't bother me anymore. Go climb your high branch. I wish you all the luck in the world in getting what you want. Jiao Jiao, please listen to me. The county princess and I are completely innocent, he pleaded, standing outside my door and trying to explain himself. I shook my head, finding the whole thing utterly tedious and tiresome. You know what my temper is like. I said coldly, leave now, and I'll let you keep your dignity. If you continue to pester me, then you can just wait for your reputation to be completely destroyed and your life to be ruined. I slammed the door shut in his face and refused to listen to any more of his excuses. Song Yin stood outside my door for a long, long time before finally leaving. The next day, I received an invitation from the Songsan Academy, asking me to come for a visit. I would have come to call on you in person. Mistress Shu, the academy principal, said to me, pouring me a cup of tea as we sat together in the academy's scenery and moon pavilion. But I'm simply swamped with work these days, so I had no choice but to take the liberty of asking you to come here instead. It is my great honor to be able to come to the academy and soak up some of its elegant atmosphere. I replied politely. Nonsense, the principal said with a laugh. Although you are a merchant, Mistress Shu, you have a heart full of kindness and generosity, as well as both talent and beauty. Even this old man feels inferior to you. I responded with the usual humble pleasantries, waiting for the principal to get to the point. The 10th day of the 6th lunar month marks the 60th anniversary of the Academy's founding, he said, stroking his graying beard, his face showing a hint of embarrassment. I would like to hold a grand banquet to entertain our distinguished guests and friends, but my own capabilities are limited. I'm truly afraid that I'll make a mess of things and embarrass myself if I try to organize it alone. The distinguished guests and friends of the Songsan Academy were either renowned scholars or high-ranking officials in the imperial court. His worries were perfectly understandable, so I have an impertinent request to make, Mistress Shu, he said. Leaning forward slightly, his tone earnest, would you be willing to take charge of organizing this banquet? The principal was clearly afraid that I would refuse, so he rushed to add, looking around at all the people I know, Mistress Shu, you are the only one who is truly capable of handling this task perfectly. His hesitation had stemmed from the fact that I was a woman, so he went to great lengths to emphasize and explain why he was asking me, for both personal and professional reasons. I had no choice but to agree. I nodded, very well. I'll sort out my schedule and come to the academy the day after tomorrow to start making preparations. We had just over a month and a half left. Time was tight, but it should be sufficient. I can't thank you enough. Don't worry about the money, spend whatever you need. With his mind at ease, the academy director's brows relaxed, the weight of worry lifting from his face. It was clear he had been agonizing over this for a long time. Unable to find anyone suitable, which was why he had turned to me, I smiled and agreed. After getting a clear idea of the kind of grandeur he envisioned for the celebration, I rose to take my leave. The director walked me to the gate, where we happened to bump into Song Yin, Yang Ling, and several other students leaving for the day. Yang Ling's eyes lit up the moment he saw me. He called out loudly, Sister Song. You're on familiar terms with the director. What Sister Song? The director chided Yang Ling sharply. This is Mistress Shu. She is also Song Yin's fiancé. Don't talk nonsense. Yang Ling froze, staring at Song Yin in stunned disbelief. Song Yin forced an awkward smile. After a busy day attending to my own affairs, I went to the academy bright and early the next morning. There was a mountain of preparations to be made. The banquet venue needed to be leveled, the wind and moon pavilion, neglected for years, required repairs, the flowers for decoration, the menu for the feast, and even the servants who would wait on the guests and manage the proceedings. Everything had to be arranged meticulously. Yang Ling came by every day to run errands and lend a hand. Song Yin also showed up, but always in the company of others. 2 days later, the foreman arrived with his crew to start work. I oversaw the construction, often skipping proper meals during breaks and grabbing a few bites of flatbread just to keep my energy up. Suddenly, I spotted a group of people approaching along the path, surrounding Princess Qingyang as she walked toward me. She stopped right in front of me, looking down her nose at me with a haughty air. I stood up and curtsied. Greetings, Your Highness. She let out a cold laugh. I hear you're the one organizing the Academy's celebration banquet. How capable of you. Such rough work, no ordinary woman would deign to take it on. Princess Qingyang pressed a handkerchief to her nose and mouth. Shielding herself from the dust, her maid spread a cushion over the stone bench in the pavilion, hung a silk screen to block the wind, and chased the craftsman away before the princess finally deigned to sit down leisurely. "Please continue your meal, Mistress Shu," Princess Qingyang said, pausing for a moment. "I'm just here to wait for someone and have a few words. I'll leave as soon as we're done. I hope I'm not disturbing you." I gave her a faint, indifferent smile. Song Yin arrived shortly after. His face stiffened the moment he saw me. I went on eating my flatbread slowly, not even bothering to lift my eyes to look at him. "Yueying," the princess called Song Yin by his courtesy name, her voice dripping with coquetry as she smiled. "Master Shu is coming to my residence for drinks tonight. I've come to fetch you." After a pause, she lowered her voice, adding conspiratorially, "The crown prince will be there too, you know." "Oh yes, right away." Song Yin stammered, his words coming out haltingly. "Let's go now, my carriage is waiting outside. Don't take that rickety old cart of yours, it's so bumpy it's unbearable." Princess Qingyang smiled up at Song Yin, her expression utterly charming. Song Yin glanced at me, then nodded his head. "Oh my." Princess Qingyang suddenly stood up, tiptoeing to dab at Song Yin's face with her handkerchief. She smiled, pressing her lips together. "You're covered in dust. Yueying, you look like a little tabby cat." "Thank you. Let's go now, then. We shouldn't be late." Song Yin turned and hurried out of the Wind and Moon Pavilion, his back looking rather hasty and embarrassed. I rubbed my temples wearily. "Take down the silk screen. Tell the craftsman to resume work." She had come here to show off, thinking I still cared. A man who was disloyal and ungrateful, he was not worth my lingering affection. Mistress Shu, Yang Ling appeared out of nowhere. Looking at me with a pained expression he was trying hard to hide. "I'm fine, really," I assured him. "That's a relief." He let out a sigh of relief. "I'll get back to work then." I sighed softly to myself. After my father passed away, Song Yin had told me he would shield me from all the storms of life. Never in my wildest dreams had I imagined that the first terrible storm I would have to endure would be brought on by him. In the blink of an eye, the 5th lunar month passed, and the preparations for the Academy's celebration banquet were finally complete. The director inspected the venue. I went over the guest list with him and finalized the menu and wine selections. All the preliminary preparations were now finished. "You must be there on the day," the director said. Having heard about what had happened with Song Yin, he treated me with even greater warmth and kindness. "Though you are a woman, your abilities far surpass those of many men. This old man wants to introduce you to someone." I tried to decline, saying it was unnecessary, but he leaned in closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "The imperial supplier position is currently vacant. This old man will put in a good word for you." With that said, I naturally agreed. On the 10th day of the 6th lunar month, I accompanied the director as the host, helping him oversee all the arrangements inside and out. A man entered the venue, standing out among the crowd. He was tall and imposing, with sharp, slanted eyebrows and bright, star-like eyes. Exuding an air of elegant refinement, he walked over with his hands clasped behind his back, his gait steady and powerful, radiating a noble and dazzling aura. It was the Crown Prince. The director personally went forward to greet him and bow. The Crown Prince helped the director up, his voice clear and melodious. "Master, there's no need for such formalities. In this academy, I am your student. How could a teacher ever bow to his own pupil?" The director insisted he did not deserve such courtesy. I bowed to the Crown Prince from afar, and when I raised my eyes, my gaze collided with Song Yin's. 5. Since he had left the capital a few days ago to handle some business with the young Marquis, he had not returned until now. He stared at me, then quickened his pace, hurrying over. "Jiao Jiao, are you all right?" I gave him a calm, indifferent glance, then turned and walked away without a word. He could act like nothing had happened and pester me, but I wanted nothing more to do with him. He made me sick. Mistress Shu, the director called out to me. He was talking to a middle-aged man dressed in the official robes of the Imperial Household Department, a pale-faced, beardless man whom I recognized as Chief Steward Lin, the man in charge of all the palace's procurement and purchases. I got along with Chief Steward Lin famously. He instructed me to go to the west gate of the palace in 5 days' time to meet a young eunuch surnamed Deng. I smiled and agreed. As I turned, my eyes met Princess Qingyang's. This time, I took the initiative to raise my eyebrows at her in a silent challenge. Princess Qingyang could never tolerate being provoked. She immediately strode over to where I stood. "What are you and Chief Steward Lin talking about?" she demanded. "Business matters," Chief Steward Lin replied concisely. Princess Qingyang pointed at me, her tone imperious and arrogant. "Come with me. I have something to say to you, Your Highness." Chief Steward Lin is in the middle of giving me important instructions. "I will come to see you shortly," I replied coolly. "Have you not finished yet?" Princess Qingyang frowned, turning to snap at Chief Steward Lin. "Are you done?" Chief Steward Lin shot Princess Qingyang a sharp, meaningful look, then turned and walked away. "Come with me." Princess Qingyang tilted her chin haughtily and strode ahead. We stopped under a hydrangea tree, with its flowers gone. The tree exuded a sense of desolate quiet, as if all the splendor of the world had faded away. Princess Qingyang cast all shame aside, no longer bothering to be subtle. She got straight to the point. "I will never allow another woman to share my husband. So, for everyone's sake, to save us all from embarrassment, you must stop clinging to him. If you want to become an imperial supplier, I can help you. It would take me no more than a single sentence. But mark my words, I could also destroy all 36 of your shops with just one sentence." As she spoke, her tone was arrogant, reckless, and naively childish all at once. I replied to her calmly, "Has your highness not heard? Song Yin and I have already broken off our engagement." "Really?" she asked, sounding utterly disbelieving. "He's the one who's been hiding it from you. Why don't you ask him yourself?" Princess Qingyang froze for a moment, then looked past me toward the rear. "Yueying, she says you two have broken off your engagement. Is this true?" Song Yin muttered something to her under his breath, then walked over to me, his voice low and urgent. "Jiao Jiao, please give me more time. Just wait for me." I looked at him with a sneer. "Wait for you? How? Wait for 3 years. In 3 years, I swear I will find a way to take you into my household," Song Yin whispered, his voice barely audible. "I know my own heart. I love you, I truly do." So that was his plan, to make me his concubine. I cut him off sharply. "Our engagement is over. Even if you became the Grand Secretary in the future, I would never be your concubine." His eyes reddened instantly with emotion. He reached out eagerly, trying to take my hand, but Princess Qingyang stepped forward, positioning herself at his side. "Have you finished your little chat? We still need to go find Crown Prince brother." Just then, someone spoke up, picking up where she had left off. "What is it that you want from me?" "Qingyang." I turned to look. Chief Steward Lin was accompanying the Crown Prince over. Chief Steward Lin glanced briefly at Princess Qingyang, then his eyes settled on my face. As a member of the Imperial Household Department, his position was a peculiar one. He wielded great power, yet held a relatively low official rank. For this reason, he was particularly sensitive to matters of respect and disrespect. In order to help Song Yin advance his official career, I had often spent a fortune buying copies of the government gazettes, keeping myself informed about court affairs. I might not have known everything, but I knew enough. Chief Steward Lin was a man who never forgot a grudge. He always retaliated in kind. He must have been deeply offended by Princess Qingyang's imperious attitude earlier. That was why he had led the Crown Prince over here, to let him see her disgraceful behavior for himself. Or perhaps it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. a calculated move to turn this trivial incident into something bigger, using it as a way to target the Marquis of Wei-Yuan. But that was none of my concern. My goal had already been achieved. I would stop here and push no further. I stepped forward to bow to the Crown Prince. I listened as Princess Qingyang stumbled through a flimsy, made-up explanation, and then, taking the opportunity, she introduced Song Yin to the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince merely gave Song Yin a cold, indifferent glance, then turned back to Princess Qingyang, his tone stern. "You are a princess. Your conduct should be dignified and prudent. You must not abuse your power to bully others." Princess Qingyang froze, her face turning as white as a sheet. Song Yin hung his head, looking utterly dejected and lost. Chief Steward Lin took a couple of steps forward and, to my surprise, introduced me to the Crown Prince. "Your Royal Highness, this is Mistress Xu. She is the one who single-handedly organized this Academy celebration banquet. Though she is a woman, her capabilities are truly admirable." The Crown Prince was still young, but he exuded an air of authority that was intimidating. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. "I have already had the pleasure of meeting Mistress Xu," the Crown Prince said, giving me a long, meaningful look. He clasped his hands behind his back and turned to leave, pausing to reprimand Princess Qingyang once more. "Come along." Princess Qingyang shot me a venomous glare, stamped her foot angrily, and followed him. Song Yin and Chief Steward Lin trailed behind. I stood rooted to the spot, rubbing my temples wearily. Chief Steward Lin suddenly turned back and walked over to me. After the banquet was over, I took my leave of the director and headed home, longing for nothing more than a good night's sleep. I had just finished washing up when Song Yin arrived. He tried to step inside, but I held up a hand to stop him. "It's getting late. Please come to my residence tomorrow morning with your parents to discuss the matter properly." Song Yin ignored my words and strode in, grabbing my hand tightly. "Jiao Jiao, you've always been so intelligent. Surely you can understand how difficult this is for me. How could I possibly refuse the princess's affections? But my heart has always belonged to you, and only you. I am utterly devoted to you." 6. The night was quiet and still. I looked at Song Yin standing before me, his eyes red-rimmed, his gaze urgent and pleading. I thought back to the night of my 15th birthday, when I had come of age. I had bought a pot of wine, and we had sat together under the peach tree by the Twin Hearts Lake. Petals had fluttered down around us as he turned to look at me, his eyes filled with nothing but my reflection. Just like now, he had taken my hand in his and promised, "Jiao Jiao, I swear I will earn you a noble title someday, a title worthy of you." I had smiled and said I believed him. I had always known he dreamed of rising through the ranks, of going from a humble scholar to a high-ranking official. So I had worked hard too. While he buried himself in his books, I ran my businesses. When he stayed up late studying, I too rarely slept a full night's rest. We had endured the bitter cold of snowy winter nights and the scorching heat of summer days together. Supporting each other every step of the way, we had worked side by side toward our shared future, striving together for a life of prosperity and splendor. But in the end, after just 2 short years, we had found ourselves standing at a fork in the road, going our separate ways. "Our engagement is over," I said, my voice cold and firm. "What more do you want from me? Tell me." Song Yin tightened his grip on my hand, repeating himself over and over, as if the words alone could change my mind. "Just wait for me. 3 years, he emphasized, desperation lacing his voice. My heart felt like it was being torn apart. The boy I had loved, the boy who was now begging me to wait for him. Once upon a time, this would have been a romantic promise between lovers. But between Song Yin and me, those words were now nothing more than a sharp knife, piercing straight through my heart. I looked at him, my voice trembling with pain and anger. "Wait 3 years for you to convince the princess to take me in as your concubine, is that it?" He squeezed my hand even harder, his voice hoarse with pleading. Is that so wrong? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed through the silent room. As long as we stay together, isn't that enough? Song Yin raised his voice. The county princess may seem spoiled and willful on the surface, but she's actually a kind-hearted person. I'm sure you two will get along perfectly fine. I pulled my hand away from his grasp. Get out. Song Yin didn't move an inch. Instead, he took 2 steps closer, his words grinding out through gritted teeth, full of malice. Xu Jiao, you're always going on and on about how much you love me, about how you've devoted your entire life to me, but in my eyes, you're nothing more than a selfish, self-serving woman. I stared at him, utterly bewildered by where this sudden tirade was coming from. You're just a merchant's daughter, you should know your place. My heart sank like a stone. This was the very last scene I had ever wanted to witness. I raised my voice and snapped at him. Shut up. And why should I shut up? Song Yin's voice turned shrill, his eyes bloodshot with rage. I'm only trying to make you see your own position clearly. You're certainly capable and intelligent. I'll give you that. You've supported both our families all by yourself. And everyone calls you Mistress Xu out of respect. But no matter how outstanding you are, you're still just a merchant's daughter. Your status is doomed to keep you from ever entering polite society. Shut up. I slapped him hard across the face. I had never felt inferior about who I was, let alone thought that being a merchant's daughter was something to be ashamed of. Every single tael of silver I had earned was through honest, legitimate means. I had always known that there were people who looked down on my background, but I had never cared about their opinions. However, I had cared deeply about Song Yin's opinion of me. Today, he had laid his true feelings bare. It was like tearing apart the flesh and blood that had bound us together inseparably for the past 10 years of our intimate relationship. A brutal, ruthless tear that sent excruciating pain straight to my heart. Song Yin was still ranting. If I were just an ordinary man, I would marry you without a second thought. But I'm going to be an official. In the future, when I move in and out of the imperial court, what will people think when they find out that my wife is just a lowly merchant's daughter? Why can't you be my concubine? What makes you think you're too good for that? I've given you all my love, is that not enough for you? Is a title really that important to you? Can't you make a little sacrifice for me? Can't you step back just a little bit? Song Yin was practically hysterical now. His loud, angry shouts were enough to rouse my mother from her room. She stood at the door, listening in utter disbelief before rushing inside and slapping Song Yin hard across the face as well. Get out of here, my mother roared at him, you ungrateful wretch. Even if Jiao Jiao never marries for the rest of her life, she will never stoop to being anyone's concubine. My mother shoved him toward the door. Get out. It was as if Song Yin had finally come to his senses, realizing what he had just said. He whispered my name hoarsely, Jiao Jiao. The worst-case scenario I had always dreaded had finally come to pass. I looked at Song Yin calmly, my gaze cold and steady. Master Song, for your own sake, do try to retain some dignity. Leave now. Song Yin opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something more, but in the end, he just hung his head and turned to leave. My mother threw her arms around me and burst into loud, heart-wrenching sobs. That very night, I ordered the workers to seal up the small side gate that connected our 2 households. The next day, Song Yin's parents came to our main gate to formally discuss the annulment of our engagement. The argument grew heated. Song Yin's mother screamed and shouted like a shrew, saying that being Song Yin's concubine was already a great honor for me, and cursing me to remain a merchant's daughter for the rest of my life. I leaned against the shade of a large tree, watching the sky split into broken pieces through the gaps in the leaves. Both the sky and the pure, sincere young man I had once loved had become equally distant and unreachable. The courtyard fell silent, except for the annoying, shrill chirping of the cicadas. Jiao Jiao, Xu Mingming's voice called out. She came running toward me, her skirts hitched up high. One of her hairpins already fallen out, she planted her hands on her hips, stood in front of me, and suddenly burst into tears. I couldn't help but laugh. "Why are you crying? That damned bastard," Xu Mingming choked out between sobs. "I went to the academy and slapped him just now. I called him an ungrateful wretch, a heartless traitor." This was so typical of Xu Mingming, always so fiery and impulsive. I wiped her tears away with a smile. "I'm not even sad about it, you're right." She sniffled. "He's not worth your tears," Xu Mingming went on. "There are plenty of other men who like you. You know, that Yang Ling has been loitering around the street opposite your house for days now. I've heard all about it." Had he really? I hadn't noticed at all. 7. I went out to meet Yang Ling. He stood before me, looking nervous and hesitant, and asked softly, "Are you doing okay?" I told him I was fine. "Did you have something you wanted to talk to me about?" Yang Ling's face turned bright red. He pulled a small, exquisitely carved black wooden box out of his sleeve and pressed it into my hands. It's a gift. I made it myself." With that, he turned and ran away as fast as his legs could carry him. After running for more than a dozen steps, he crashed into someone else. He apologized flusteredly, then ducked into an alleyway and disappeared from sight. But a pair of eyes peeked cautiously out from behind the alley wall, watching my reaction secretly. I opened the wooden box. Inside was a jade hairpin, its white jade clear, translucent, and elegant in appearance. I couldn't help but smile to myself. From inside the alley came the sound of Yang Ling's muffled, joyful cheers and excited little jumps. When I returned home, I placed the hairpin on my desk, planning to return it to him the next time we met. But to my surprise, I saw him again the very next day. He was waiting for me outside my shop, and once again, he pressed an identical wooden box into my hands. This time, it contained a string of jade bracelets. On the third day, it was a pair of jade earrings. I didn't dislike Yang Ling, but I had no desire to get involved with him either. The same concerns that had plagued Song Yin would undoubtedly plague Yang Ling as well. That afternoon, I sent someone to ask Yang Ling to meet me at the back hill of the academy, so that I could return all 3 gifts to him. "Master Yang," I said, handing him the boxes, "I know and appreciate your feelings for me, and I'm truly honored by your affections, but you and I are simply not suited for each other. Please take these gifts back. I wish you all the best in finding a woman who truly captures your heart, a woman with whom you can share a lifetime of happiness and mutual respect." Yang Ling's eyes turned red with tears. He reached out to stop me, wanting to say something, but before he could, Song Yin suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He grabbed Yang Ling by the front of his robe, his face twisted with rage. "I thought you were my brother, but you've been coveting my fiancé behind my back. You're no better than a beast." Yang Ling roared back, shoving Song Yin away. "She has already broken off her engagement with you. She is unmarried now, why can't I pursue her?" Song Yin punched Yang Ling hard in the face. "She's still not someone you're worthy of pursuing." Yang Ling refused to back down, throwing a punch right back at Song Yin. The two of them began to brawl noisily, attracting the attention of the academy principal, who came running over and reprimanded them both severely. In the end, Yang Ling was taken home by his mother. Song Yin and I stood alone in the scenery and moon pavilion. His face was covered in black and blue bruises, but he looked at me with a wounded, aggrieved expression. "Song Yin," I said coldly, turning to leave. "I never want to see you again." I stormed out of the academy, not sparing him a single backward glance. But what I hadn't expected was that the next day, Yang Ling's mother would come to my house angry and aggressive. She ranted and raved at me for a long time, saying essentially that I was not good enough for her son, and ordering me to stay far away from him. I told her I understood. Although the Yang family was not particularly prominent or noble, they were still a family of scholars. It had been fully expected that his mother would not approve of me, my sensible, compliant attitude seemed to satisfy Lady Yang greatly. "What time is it now?" I asked my maid Qinghe. Qinghe replied that it was almost the 7th hour of the morning. I tidied myself up and set off for the imperial palace. Today was the day I had arranged to meet with Master Lin, one of the high-ranking palace officials. Becoming an imperial supplier would be a new step up for me, a step well worth fighting for. Qinghe muttered angrily to herself as we walked. "Miss, that Lady Yang is going too far. It was clearly Master Yang who was pestering you, but she made it sound like everything was your fault." I looked out at the busy, bustling streets filled with carriages and horses, and replied calmly, "There's no need to be angry. She's just a stranger to us." Qinghe mumbled a reluctant agreement. Promptly at the 7th hour of the morning, I arrived at the west gate of the imperial palace. The eunuch surnamed Deng, who had been sent to meet me, was already waiting there, craning his neck to look for me. He led me through the west gate and into the palace. I walked along a long, winding corridor. The palace walls on either side were faded and stained with age, but they still exuded an air of solemn dignity and awe-inspiring grandeur. As I was passing through a small side gate, a group of people approached from the opposite direction. Eunuch Deng quickly pulled me back, urging me to stand pressed up against the wall to make way for them. A pair of boots embroidered with golden thread walked past in front of me. From the corner of my eye, I saw them suddenly stop. The tips of the boots turned, facing directly toward me. "Mistress Shu," a cold, deep voice sounded above my head. "Yes," I replied, dropping to one knee in a respectful curtsy. "Your humble servant Shu Jiao greets your Royal Highness the Crown Prince." The Crown Prince asked me what I was doing here. I told him the truth. He looked thoughtful for a moment, then his gaze shifted to Eunuch Deng. "Did Master Lin tell you to take this path?" "Yes, Your Royal Highness," Eunuch Deng replied tremblingly. "Last night, the wind was very strong, and a tile fell from the roof of the outer courtyard corridor. The entrance has been sealed off today for repairs." The Crown Prince raised an eyebrow, then turned his gaze back to me. I felt a sense of suspicion about everything that was happening today, but I dared not show it on my face. I simply kept my head bowed respectfully, standing quietly. Just as the Crown Prince was about to leave, he suddenly turned back to me again and asked, "Mistress Shu, do you know how to appraise antiques? I owned a pawn shop." Although my skills in identifying valuable items were not as sharp as those of my pawnbrokers, I did know a thing or two about them. I had no intention of being modest about it. I answered truthfully, "I know a little bit about it." "Then come with me," the Crown Prince said, turning and walking away with his hands clasped behind his back. I didn't hesitate for a moment, lowering my head and following closely behind him. At first, the Crown Prince walked very quickly, but then he suddenly stopped, exchanging a few casual words with one of his bodyguards. After that, his pace slowed down considerably. I kept my mind focused on the task at hand, my eyes fixed on the back of his tall, slender figure and his steady, measured steps. He seemed to be only 22 years old this year, but his composure and bearing were far beyond what one would expect from someone of his age, a true child of heaven. A dragon among men, this was exactly what it meant to be one. The Crown Prince led me into a room filled with a dazzling array of rare and precious treasures. He pointed to a celadon plum vase, his tone taking on a hint of casual curiosity. "Could you do me the honor of taking a look at this? Mistress Shu, tell me which dynasty this vase is from." 8. I examined the vase carefully, running my fingers gently over its smooth surface. After a moment of silence, I told him, "Its celadon glaze is as clear as the sky, its luster as bright as a mirror. This is a piece of the highest quality, with a rich, stable color." The Crown Prince raised an eyebrow slightly, gesturing for me to continue. "As far as I know, no dynasty in history has ever been able to fire celadon with such a rich, stable hue. Therefore, This vase must be a product of our current dynasty, a masterpiece crafted by the imperial kill. This time, it wasn't just the crown prince who looked surprised. Even the bodyguards standing outside the door showed signs of shock. Glancing at me in disbelief, I wasn't sure what their reactions meant, so I simply looked at the crown prince with a calm, straightforward gaze. The crown prince smiled. When he smiled, his brows and eyes softened, making him look much more approachable and gentle. You were being too modest just now, Mistress Shu. Your skill in appraising antiques is far more than just a little bit. I bowed my head respectfully, then paused for a moment before adding. The lines of this plum vase are smooth and flowing. The ratio between the vase's neck and its body is perfectly balanced and elegant. Personally, I believe that the artisan who created this vase must have been a true master of his craft. I had spoken more than I usually would, but I was standing in front of the crown prince of our dynasty, and I had come here with a purpose. If I didn't take this chance to make a bold impression, I might never get another opportunity like this again. The crown prince's smile widened as he looked me up and down. I finally understand now why both the academy principal and Master Lin recommended you so highly. I knew I had made the right choice to take that bold risk. The design of this plum vase must have been commissioned by either the crown prince himself, the emperor, or the empress. Come with me, the crown prince said, stepping out of the room. I followed closely behind him. My heart now having a rough idea of what was really going on today. The current Empress Dowager was not the biological mother of the Emperor. This had led to a division of political factions between the Empress Dowager and the Empress. Master Lin was a loyal supporter of the Empress and the Crown Prince's faction. It was likely that he was currently at odds with the Marquis of Weiyuan, who belonged to the Empress Dowager's faction. Master Lin had arranged for me to come to the palace today, and had deliberately had me take the inner courtyard corridor so that I would run into the Crown Prince. I suspected that his intentions might have been twofold. First, he might have wanted to groom me as a potential ally, and was introducing me to the Crown Prince to get his approval first. Second, he might have wanted to use me, a person of his own, to seduce the unmarried Crown Prince. There might have been a third possibility, but based on what I had seen so far, I couldn't quite figure it out yet. My thoughts then turned to Song Yin. I wondered if he had ignored my warning and was still secretly associating with both the Grand Secretary Shu and the Crown Prince's faction. If he was, then he was truly trying to ride two boats at once. What are you thinking about? The Crown Prince asked, turning to look at me with a smile, the bright sunlight shining down on him from above. I quickly lowered my head, my expression becoming respectful once more. I was just thinking about the matter of becoming an imperial supplier, Your Royal Highness. The Crown Prince hummed softly in acknowledgement. What kind of business are you interested in? Tea, silk, ink, porcelain, any of these will do. I am also open to other opportunities, I replied, holding nothing back. A man as astute as the Crown Prince would only be put off by beating around the bush. The Crown Prince nodded slightly, to my surprise. He personally escorted me to the Imperial Household Department. Chief Steward Lin emerged to greet us, a broad, delighted smile spreading across his face. I return this capable person to your care, the Crown Prince said, casting me a meaningful glance before turning on his heel and walking away. I bowed deeply alongside Chief Steward Lin. Once the Crown Prince was out of earshot, Chief Steward Lin turned to me, his eyes crinkling with satisfaction. Do not worry, Mistress Shu, he said as we walked side by side. You are a woman of genuine talent. This old eunuch would never stoop to trading on your looks. I am deeply grateful for your support, I replied calmly. In truth, even if Chief Steward Lin had tried to persuade me to use my beauty as a tool, I would have found a way to make him abandon that idea. But the people of the Imperial Household Department were all seasoned schemers. I had merely gotten a small taste of their world today. Everything went smoothly. Chief Steward Steward Lin appointed me as the supplier of porcelain to the palace. Being an imperial supplier was not just about providing goods, it was also about selling them. The entire porcelain trade of the imperial household department would now be under my management. I would pay a quarterly tribute to the palace while also supplying it with fine porcelain wares. This was a great honor, and even greater fortune. I set a date and prepared to visit the master potters to discuss our new designs. Before I left the capital, Song Yin blocked my carriage in the alley. I lifted the curtain and looked at him silently. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "You have achieved exactly what you wanted. And may you achieve your heart's desire soon as well," I said, signaling for him to step aside. "It is getting late, I must be on my way." Song Yin's eyes reddened instantly. "Jiao Jiao, my heart aches without you. I cannot sleep a single night." I looked at him coolly. "Then perhaps you should find something to take your mind off it. My shops are short-handed lately, with the new rice shipments arriving. Spend half a day working there, and you will have no trouble falling asleep." He froze, taking a step back in shock. "How can you be so cold, so unaffected? If I were not calm, I would have grabbed you by the collar and demanded to know where your heart really is. But I would never do that. You have made your choice. Now walk the path you have chosen," I said coldly. I let the curtain fall back into place, picked up my account books, and began flipping through them slowly as the carriage rolled out of the capital city. Everything was going smoothly. In fact, aside from matters of the heart, I was confident in my ability to handle anything that came my way. If a task was difficult, I would simply work harder at it. Only love was far too uncontrollable. After meeting with the master potters, the days flew by in a blur of finalizing designs, overseeing the firing of the porcelain, stocking the shops, and managing sales. Before I knew it, I had barely had time to lick my wounds when the 11th lunar month arrived, and the capital was blanketed in its 4th snowfall of the year. Snowflakes drifted down gently from the sky as I stood behind Chief Steward Lin, waiting outside the Emperor's private study. Today was a particularly special day. It was the day Song Yin and Princess Qingyang were to exchange their engagement gifts. I clutched my account books tightly, my fingertips cold as ice. "Do not be nervous," Chief Steward Lin reassured me, patting my arm gently. "His Majesty has a very amiable temperament. Simply follow the proper etiquette, and all will be well." I nodded, forcing a calm expression onto my face. "Your Royal Highness." Suddenly, the sound of respectful greetings erupted around us. I kept my head bowed and curtsied along with everyone else, assuming the Crown Prince would simply pass by. To my surprise, he stopped right in front of me, nodding at the account books in my hands. "Quarterly reports?" he asked. "Yes, Your Royal Highness," I replied. He took the account books from me, flipped through them quickly, and handed them back. As his warm fingers brushed against the back of my hand accidentally, a faint tingle shot up my arm. "Well done," he said, withdrawing his hand. He strode forward and pushed open the door to the study, calling out to the Emperor inside. "Father, Chief Steward Lin is waiting outside. The weather is cold, and he is advanced in years. He should not be kept standing in the snow." "It was my oversight," the Emperor's voice called out, warm with amusement. "Send him in at once. And invite Elder Statesman Shu and Marquis Weiyuan to join us as well. I want them to hear the Imperial Household Department's accounts for this year." The Emperor's tone was cheerful. "For the first time in years, my treasury is actually full." Inside the study, the sound of polite laughter filled the air. Chief Steward Lin gave my wrist a gentle squeeze before leading the way into the room, with a mix of trepidation and resolve. I followed him into the most prestigious study in the entire kingdom. 9. True to Chief Steward Lin's words, the Emperor was warm and approachable. He praised me as a female Zhongyu, a reference to one of Confucius's most capable disciples, known for his business acumen. I, in turn, complimented the elegant brushwork of his designs, comparing them to the works of master artists. The others in the room listened to our exchange with nothing but smiles and polite agreement. The success of porcelain sales depends far more on the quality and beauty of the wares than on marketing, Marquis Weiyuan said with a faint smile, his eyes lingering on me. I shot him a cool, indifferent glance from the corner of my eye, then lowered my head and said nothing more. The emperor, however, seemed unaffected by the Marquis's subtle jab. He remained in high spirits, even going so far as to write a 4-character inscription for me as a reward. Julie Sai Yi ********. When one dwells in profit, one must think of righteousness ******. The 4 characters were written in a bold, vigorous hand, exuding a spirit of chivalry and integrity. Why not have this made into a plaque? The Crown Prince suggested casually, his tone light as if it were just a passing thought. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. A framed inscription would typically be hung in the main hall of a scholar's home, a subtle, understated display of honor, fitting for a family of literati. But for a merchant like me, a plaque would be a far more ostentatious symbol of status, meant to be hung high above the front gate for all to see, proclaiming one's prestige and success to the world. The Crown Prince was subtly elevating my status with this gesture. Excellent idea, the Emperor exclaimed, holding out the scroll to Chief Steward Lin, but the Crown Prince stepped forward and took it instead. You will be swamped with work at the end of the year. Allow me to take care of this for you, Father. The Emperor had no objection. He offered me a few more words of encouragement before I took my leave. Chief Steward Lin remained behind in the study. I followed the Crown Prince back to the Imperial Household Department. He held an umbrella over his shoulder with one hand and clutched the Emperor's inscription in the other, walking at a slow, unhurried pace. I followed closely behind him, watching as his footsteps left faint prints on each flagstone beneath our feet. The snow continued to fall, melting instantly upon contact with the warm stone, turning the Crown Prince's footprints into tiny, rippling puddles. Mistress Shu, the Crown Prince said suddenly, coming to a stop. He stood about half an arm's length away from me, looking down at me with his dark, piercing eyes. No one else was around, only him and me, standing alone in the quiet corridor. Yes, I replied. Then quickly corrected myself, lowering my head in deference. Your Royal Highness has a command. Are you tired? He asked, his voice softening slightly. No, Your Royal Highness, I answered. I thought I heard the Crown Prince chuckle, but I kept my eyes fixed firmly on his feet, not daring to look up. He resumed walking, and I followed him down the long, seemingly endless corridor. As we passed a weathered red wall, a single branch of red plum blossoms jutted out over the top, its delicate petals vibrant and bright against the snow, exuding an air of pure, unadulterated elegance. We walked on for a long while. Suddenly, I froze in my tracks. When I looked up, I saw the very same branch of plum blossoms again. I blinked in surprise. Do you like it? The Crown Prince asked, a faint, playful quirk tugging at the corner of his sharp, slanted eyebrows. I shifted my gaze from his face to the plum blossoms, nodding my head. It is beautiful. Is the blossom outside the wall more beautiful? He asked, his voice growing more serious, the playful glint fading from his eyes as a look of quiet solemnity settled over his features, his expression blending seamlessly with the imposing grandeur of the palace walls surrounding us, or the one inside. My hands, hidden inside the sleeves of my robe, clenched into tight fists. I understood his implication perfectly. He was destined to be an insider, a man bound by the walls of the palace, by duty and power. This time, I did not answer him. I thought I heard him let out a soft sigh. He turned and continued walking. After a dozen more steps, we reached a small side gate, beyond which lay the Imperial Household Department. We selected a design for the plaque and sat in the courtyard, sipping tea as we waited for the craftsmen to finish their work. Mistress Shu, the Crown Prince said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. I am here, Your Royal Highness, I replied. Do you fear me? He asked, his eyes fixed on mine. I respect you, I said, lifting my head to meet his gaze. A faint, polite smile playing on my lips. Your Royal Highness possesses the bearing of a true dragon and the grace of a phoenix. The Crown Prince laughed, a warm, genuine sound that caught me completely off guard. I stared at him in stunned silence. The flowers inside the wall may lack the wild charm of those outside, he said, his voice soft with amusement. But if you had someone to enjoy them with you, would that not make up for the lack? My heart raced as I struggled to maintain my composure, carefully choosing my words. Your Royal Highness, the flowers remain the same year after year, I said slowly, my voice steady. But people are far more fleeting. The Crown Prince's gaze lingered on my face for a long moment. He hummed softly in acknowledgement. You speak the truth. I let out a silent breath of relief. Do you have plum blossoms in your home? He asked, changing the subject. My mother loves tending to flowers and plants, I replied, my tone lightening considerably now that the tension had eased. In winter, besides several plum trees, we also have camellias in full bloom, competing for beauty as they wait for spring to arrive. He noticed the shift in my mood, casting me a deep, meaningful look before smiling again, a warm, gentle smile that seemed to wrap around me like a blanket. Then, would I be welcome to visit your home to admire the flowers? He asked. I was stunned once more. I had lost my composure more times today in his presence than I had in years, my emotions dancing to the tune of his every word. Of course, Your Royal Highness, I replied quickly. Your visit would be a great honor to my family. He cut me off with a laugh, shaking his head. Mistress Shu, you are not a scholar official, yet you have mastered the art of speaking in official platitudes perfectly. I lowered my head, feeling a bead of sweat trickle down my forehead, which I was suddenly desperate to wipe away. It is settled then, he said, standing up and walking toward the back courtyard. I will deliver the plaque to your home later. In return, you will host me for a meal and show me your flowers as a thank you. Clearly, he had grown tired of my formalities. I pressed a hand to my chest, my heart still fluttering. The Crown Prince traveled in his own carriage, while I rode in mine, following behind him. The streets were lined with strings of firecrackers. End to end, my employees from the Shu family businesses, having received advance notice, stood ready with incense sticks in their hands, eager to light them. At the signal of a eunuch's loud shout, the streets erupted in a cacophony of noise as the firecrackers were lit, sending clouds of smoke billowing into the air. Qinghe, my maid, jumped up and down with excitement. Miss, tonight, I will go to the ancestral hall and burn incense for every single one of our ancestors, telling them how you have honored the Shu family name. I pinched her cheek affectionately, then asked them to continue watching over and protecting me. My employees carried baskets full of copper coins, scattering them generously along the street. Half the city turned out to congratulate me. I decided to get out of the carriage and walk among the crowd, accepting their well wishes with a smile. I announced that for the next 3 days, all Shu family coal shops would be selling their coal at half price, staying open all night to serve customers. The people cheered with joy, their words of congratulations pouring forth like a river. The Crown Prince's carriage was surrounded by the throng of people. I assumed he wished to avoid drawing too much attention, so I did not go over to disturb him. 2/4 of an hour later, the carriages stopped at the gate of my house. My mother, dressed in a brand new robe made specially for the new year, stood tall and dignified at the head of a line of servants, all of whom knelt down to welcome the imperial plaque. The golden plaque was hung high above the front gate. My mother pressed bags of gold into the eunuch's hands, who grinned from ear to ear, showering us with congratulations. Amidst the deafening sound of firecrackers, a familiar figure suddenly appeared before me. Princess Qingyang was dressed in a pale red robe. Her hands clasped behind her back as she tilted her head up to examine the plaque. She turned to look at me, a sneer curling her lips. An imperial plaque, she scoffed. I thought His Majesty would at least grant you a 5th-rank official title for your efforts. But then again, you are nothing more than a lowly merchant woman. This honor is far more than you deserve. Standing beside her, Song Yin's eyes darted nervously from side to side, avoiding my gaze. Princess, I advise you not to provoke me, I said coolly, raising an eyebrow at her. If I become displeased, I will go over there and slap my former fiancé, the man who abandoned me for another woman. It will be your family that loses face, not mine. I might have to tolerate her because of her royal status. But when it came to Song Yin, I owed him nothing. Princess Qingyang's face darkened with rage. She was determined to ruin my celebration. You would not dare. Oh, and do not bother coming to our engagement banquet tonight. After all the guests will be nobles and dignitaries. Your presence would be most inappropriate. I lowered my eyes, about to retort, when the crowd suddenly parted to make way for someone. The Crown Prince walked over to stand beside me, his expression cold and stern as he fixed his gaze on Princess Qingyang. The color drained from Princess Qingyang's face instantly. 10. The Crown Prince looked at the princess, his voice sharp with displeasure. You seem to have some grievance with Mistress Shu. What is it about? Crown Prince brother, Princess Qingyang stammered, her voice trembling with fear as she struggled to find the right words. But the Crown Prince insisted, his tone brooking no argument. Speak plainly. I will judge this matter fairly and uphold justice for you. Tears welled up in Princess Qingyang's eyes. Song Yin stepped forward, bowing deeply, eager to explain, but the Crown Prince held up a hand, silencing him with a single gesture. Song Yin had no choice but to step back, his face flushed with embarrassment. Princess Qingyang was left tongue-tied, unable to speak. How could she possibly tell the Crown Prince the truth, that she had bullied me into breaking off my engagement with Song Yin? Only to feel jealous of our past relationship and take her anger out on me. Since you cannot explain yourself clearly, the Crown Prince said, his voice cold as ice, then it is clear that you are the one at fault, deliberately picking a quarrel, effective tomorrow. You are confined to your palace for 1 month as punishment. He brushed a speck of dust from his sleeve, his eyes never leaving the princess's face. Now leave. Humiliated beyond words, Princess Qingyang burst into tears and fled. Running away as fast as her legs could carry her, Song Yin chased after her, but not before casting a suspicious glance back at the Crown Prince and me. Whispers rippled through the crowd, all talking about how Song Yin had abandoned me to cling to the high status of the Qingyang County princess. I felt a strange sense of detachment. The Crown Prince had always been a man of restraint, according to his usual style. He would never have reprimanded the Qingyang County princess in front of so many people, but he had done exactly that without any attempt to soften his words, leaving her with absolutely no face to speak of. He had done it deliberately, to lend me his support. I lifted my eyes to look at him. He was already looking back at me. I quickly lowered my gaze and said softly, "It's cold outside, Your Royal Highness. Please come inside the mansion." Very well, he walked ahead of me, and I followed closely behind. My mother was already chatting with his accompanying eunuch, asking about the Crown Prince's favorite dishes, planning to cook them herself. The flower viewing lasted no more than a quarter of an hour. After that, I accompanied the Crown Prince to my study. He looked at many of my paintings and calligraphy works. My painting skills were not particularly good. It was merely a pastime I turned to when I was in a bad mood. During the meal, he insisted that both my mother and I sit down at the table with him. The atmosphere was awkward at first, but he took the initiative to praise my mother's cooking skills, asking her about her recipes and why her dishes tasted so different from those in the imperial palace. My mother soon relaxed, chatting with him animatedly about all sorts of things. I sat on the side, sipping tea and listening quietly to their conversation. Suddenly, I thought of how my mother had gotten along with Song Yin in the past. Song Yin had also been very good at talking, always managing to make my mother happy, searching the entire city for her favorite camellias, hunting down the rare ingredients she loved, but my mother had always been cool toward him. She had often said that Song Yin did everything with too obvious a motive, and she didn't like people like that. The thought flashed through my mind, and I was suddenly ashamed to realize that I was comparing the two men. I forced a smile, said I needed to wash my hands, and excused myself from the dining room. A gust of cold wind hit my face, clearing my head instantly. One of the Crown Prince's bodyguards came to inform him that he was needed back at the palace for an urgent meeting. When he came out and saw me lingering under the covered corridor, he stopped and looked at me quietly, saying in a low voice, "Did my presence make you uncomfortable?" I hung my head, saying nothing. "I see," the Crown Prince said, his tone tinged with a hint of bitterness. He let out a soft sigh. He walked a few steps without looking back, then said over his shoulder, "If the Qingyang County princess comes to pester you again, don't be afraid of her." I nodded in acknowledgement, saying softly, "Your humble servant will see you off, Your Royal Highness. It's cold outside." "No need." He walked away quickly, his back straight and his steps firm and resolute. I thought of how he had always slowed his pace whenever he walked ahead of me before. He's gone now. "What are you looking at?" My mother tugged at my hand, tilting her head to look at me. "Jiao Jiao." I smiled faintly, telling her not to let her imagination run wild. "And why shouldn't I? My Jiao Jiao is second to none in this world. She would make a perfectly worthy crown princess." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "That's the crown princess we're talking about, the future empress of the realm. Do you really think my background is good enough for that?" My mother muttered a few words under her breath, clearly indignant but unable to find a proper retort. "Mother," I said, leaning my head against her shoulder, "it will just be the two of us from now on. Isn't that nice?" My mother held me tightly in her arms, her voice choking with emotion, but she didn't shed a single tear. "I'll listen to you, my dear. As long as you're happy, I won't say a word against it." I smiled and said that was good. The next day was the Imperial Household Department's victory banquet. Master Lin spent the entire day feeling confused and suspicious. The Crown Prince had promised to attend the banquet yesterday, but today he had sent his regrets, claiming to be busy with official business. Master Lin knew that the Crown Prince was not a man who broke his promises lightly, so he grew deeply troubled. He sent someone to inquire, and the report came back that the Crown Prince was actually at leisure in the Eastern Palace. He had not been busy at all. He had deliberately avoided coming to the banquet. I stared silently at the teacup in my hand, my heart in a state of turmoil. The end of the year was a busy time. I didn't go back to the Imperial Household Department again, and naturally, I didn't see the Crown Prince either. Song Yin came to my shop to look for me, tentatively asking a few questions about my relationship with the Crown Prince. I replied with cold, perfunctory answers. He suddenly said, "Jiao Jiao, even if you manage to enter the Crown Prince's mansion, the highest position you can hope for is that of a secondary consort, and a secondary consort is nothing more than a concubine." "Song Yin," I called his name sharply. He froze, a flicker of hope appearing in his eyes. I stared at him coldly and said one word, "Get out." His face stiffened with anger, and he stormed away in a rage. I rubbed my temples tiredly, feeling for the first time that my own affairs had become a complete and utter mess. The new year came in the blink of an eye. In previous years, our two families had always celebrated together, filling the house with noise and laughter. But this year, It was just my mother and me, and the house inevitably felt cold and empty. On New Year's Eve, I sat in the courtyard, watching Qinghe and the other servants setting off fireworks. Xu Mingming arrived, bringing with her a man wearing a black hat pulled low over his face. He removed the hat, revealing red-rimmed eyes that stared at me intently. "Master Yang," I said, looking him over. It had been half a year since I last saw him, and he had matured quite a bit, his face thinner than before. He only stared at me in silence for a long moment, then bowed deeply to me, his head almost touching the ground. "I owe you an apology for what happened that day. It's all right." I shook my head. "Please don't dwell on it anymore." Yang Ling bit his lip, bowed again, then turned and walked away without daring to look back. I turned to look at Xu Mingming. She shrugged her shoulders and said, "He's been torturing himself with guilt over it. We had to save him from himself. He has a pure and sincere heart." I nodded in agreement. "Unfortunately, he has a mother who loves him too much, loves him so much that she's blind to everything else." Xu Mingming said with a note of sarcasm. We both laughed. Xu Mingming hooked her arm through mine and said, "How about a few drinks? I'll stay with you to keep watch over the new year tonight." I said that would be nice. On the 9th day of the 3rd lunar month, Song Yin entered the Imperial Examination Hall. The entire city cleared the way for the candidates taking the spring civil service exam. The exam results were announced in the 4th month. Song Yin achieved his long-cherished wish of passing the exam, but his ranking was only mediocre. Through the connections of the Marquis of Wei Yuan's mansion, he managed to secure a position in the Hanlin Academy to gain some official experience. Yang Ling also passed the exam with flying colors. The Yang mansion was soon flooded with matchmakers eager to arrange a marriage for him. In the 6th month, the selection for the crown princess began in the imperial court. The Empress Dowager insisted on marrying her grandniece to the crown prince, while the Empress naturally put forward several candidates from her own family as well. Undercurrents of political intrigue surged beneath the surface of the court. Song Yin and the Qingyang County princess set the date for their wedding in the 8th month. Feeling troubled and restless, I decided to leave the capital for a while. "It's good for you to get away," Xu Mingming said, hugging me tightly. "Out of sight, out of mind, it will do you good to clear your head." In the 7th month, I received a letter from Master Lin. The long-standing stalemate over the selection of the crown princess had suddenly been broken. To everyone's surprise, the formidable Empress Dowager had backed down, no longer insisting that her grandniece become the crown princess, but she also refused to allow any of the Empress's nieces to enter the Eastern Palace. The Empress had agreed to this compromise. Master Lin suspected that the crown prince had secretly pulled the strings behind the scenes. No one knew who the crown prince favored, or who he intended to benefit from this arrangement. My heart skipped a beat as I read the letter. 11. But I didn't return to the capital. I had no intention of going back just yet. Life was short, but the world was vast and wide. There were so many things I could do with my life. Things that would bring me far more peace and contentment than love and romance ever had. In the middle of the 7th month, before the weather turned cold, I visited 3 seaports and opened 3 new sea routes to export our goods overseas. A round trip by ship took 2 months. The steward who had accompanied the first voyage returned with tears in his eyes, describing in vivid detail how our tea, silk, satin, and porcelain had sold like hotcakes overseas. "You've worked hard," I smiled. Handing him a deed to a house. "I've bought you a mansion at the seaport. You can either bring your family to live with you there, or use it as your own base of operations." The steward was overcome with emotion, pouring out a flood of sincere words to pledge his loyalty to me. "This is just the first shipment," I said. "Show me the quality of the imported goods we received in return." I inspected the goods personally and found them to be of excellent quality, with novel and unique designs. I immediately opened 6 new shops selling imported goods in 6 different prefectures. People were fascinated by these exotic products, which sold out almost instantly, causing a sensation across the region. Master Lin sent me a letter every month, informing me that the emperor had also entrusted me with the exclusive rights to export tea and silk on behalf of the imperial court. He also sent me the official appointment documents. I hastily hired 100 new workers, personally escorted 6 ships loaded with goods out to sea. In the midst of violent storms and towering waves, I faced death head-on for the first time in my life, feeling the overwhelming insignificance of my own existence. At the end of the 11th month, I had no choice but to return to the capital. As my carriage stopped in front of my house, I looked up at the grand plaque hanging above the main gate, an honor bestowed upon us to glorify our ancestors, and felt a sudden sense of peace and contentment wash over me. Upon entering the house, I learned that my mother had fallen ill. "Why didn't you write to tell me?" I asked, holding her hand tightly. Overcome with guilt. "It's nothing serious," she said reassuringly. "Both ordinary doctors and imperial physicians have seen me. They said I'll recover naturally when the weather warms up." Imperial physicians? Did Master Lin arrange for them to come? "It was the Crown Prince," my mother said, looking a little nervous, as if afraid that I would be displeased. "He didn't come in person, he sent his personal eunuch to check on me." "The eunuch comes twice every month," I nodded, saying that I would go to the palace to pay my respects to the emperor tomorrow, and if I saw the Crown Prince, I would thank him in person. Over the past year, the revenue of the Imperial Household Department had quadrupled, and the lion's share of this achievement was due to my efforts. The emperor was overjoyed at the sudden influx of wealth. He used the money to renovate the imperial harem, expand the imperial library, and commissioned officials to begin compiling the Great Jew Records *. This time, instead of going to the study, I followed Master Lin through the inner palace at the 3rd quarter of the Marrow hour to attend the morning court session in the Golden Hall. In the Golden Hall, the officials stood in 2 rows on either side of the throne. The Crown Prince stood at the very front of the rows, his eyes fixed quietly on me. Our eyes met for a brief moment. I quickly lowered my gaze, stepped forward to pay my respects to the emperor, then stood bowed respectfully to one side. The emperor praised me effusively, sparing no words of commendation. I understood his feelings. He had been constrained by a lack of funds all his life, and now, thanks to me, he had suddenly become wealthy. This had rekindled his ambition, filling him with a desire to achieve great things. "I finally understand now, without money, nothing can be accomplished," the emperor said to the assembled officials. "I owe a great debt of gratitude to Mistress Shu. Though she is but a woman, she has single-handedly filled the imperial treasury. Her contributions far exceed those of many people standing here today." I didn't turn around, but I could feel all kinds of gazes, admiring, envious, resentful, falling upon me. I didn't care about them, nor did I fear them. When a person stands out from the crowd, jealousy is inevitable. If I let that fear hold me back and make me shrink from challenges, wouldn't that be cutting off my nose to spite my face? Just then, Master Lin stepped forward to submit his resignation from his position in the Imperial Household Department. An uproar erupted in the hall. The shock was not caused by his resignation itself, but by the timing of it. Choosing this exact moment to resign, I was equally stunned. Turning to look at him, Master Lin knelt down in the hall, his head bowed, his back straight with resolve, clearly determined to go through with it. The emperor accepted his resignation, then shifted his gaze to me. My heart suddenly began to pound wildly in my chest. The imperial household department of our dynasty was different from that of previous dynasties. The position of director of the imperial household department was not considered an official administrative post, so it had always been held by eunuchs or imperial relatives. The director held a nominal rank of the 3rd grade, with a salary corresponding to that rank. Sure enough, the emperor immediately issued an edict appointing me as the new director of the Imperial Household Department. Chaos erupted in the hall. The officials argued fiercely, their main point being that while my abilities were more than sufficient to warrant an official appointment and promotion in rank, I was a woman, and there was no precedent in the history of our dynasty for a woman to hold an official position. It would be a violation of ancestral traditions and imperial etiquette if we claimed to judge people based on their abilities, yet cling stubbornly to the distinction between men and women. Is that not the height of irony? The crown prince stepped forward. Standing in front of me with his hands clasped behind his back, his tone was light and casual, yet his words rang out clearly and powerfully, carrying the weight of authority without any trace of anger. If there is no precedent in our dynasty for a woman to hold an official post, then, he turned to look at me. I lifted my head to meet his gaze. In that fleeting moment, both of us were perfectly calm. A quiet, steady look passed between us. Then we both looked away. He suddenly raised his voice, his words ringing out through the silent hall. Then let the emperor, together with Mistress Shu, create a new precedent. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden hall fell completely silent. No one dared to raise any further objections. To do so would be tantamount to saying that the emperor was unfit to rule. All the officials hung their heads in submission. I accepted the official appointment document, which the emperor had clearly prepared in advance, holding it reverently in my hands. As I left the golden hall and sat down in my carriage, I stared at the gilded cover of the document in my hands, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. My carriage was once again stopped in the alley by Song Yin. It had been almost a year since we last saw each other. He had grown more mature, his features harder. He lifted the carriage curtain halfway and looked up at me, his eyes filled with longing. "Jiao Jiao," he said softly, "you're back." "I'm back." His gaze shifted to the document in my hands, his body trembled violently, and he almost lost his balance and fell. "You actually," he whispered, his face turning deathly pale, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He seemed to realize something, but was too shocked to find the words to say it. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He had once promised me countless times that he would earn a noble title for me, that I would be able to take pride in him as my husband. But 2 years after leaving him behind, I no longer needed to take pride in any man. I had earned the rank of a 3rd-grade official through my own efforts. Naturally, he couldn't bear to see it. "Jiao Jiao, I'm sorry." He let the carriage curtain fall back into place, then stumbled unsteadily toward his own home. I watched his retreating figure grow smaller and more indistinct, a sudden wave of strangeness washing over me. That boy I once loved and cherished, the one I thought I would spend my whole life with, he was vanishing from my life, completely and irrevocably, and along with his defeated, desolate back, a piece of my heart, 17 years of my life, vanished too. I took a deep breath, leaning back against the carriage seat to rest. Suddenly, my mother's voice rang out from the doorway. "Jiao Jiao, why are you sitting out here again? Hurry back inside." My mother looked as if her illness had completely vanished. She tugged me toward the courtyard, chattering excitedly. "We have a guest. He's been waiting for you for a quarter of an hour already." "Who is it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "A very distinguished guest." My mother held my official documents reverently above her head, her eyes shining with pride. "Go on in. I'm off to the ancestral hall to show off." I laughed to myself, turning toward the main hall. As I lifted the curtain, my eyes met the crown prince's. He was looking at me, a faint, warm smile playing on his lips. "You enjoy sitting in carriages so much?" he asked. 12. As he spoke those words, my mind wandered, wondering if he had seen me talking to Song Yin when he entered the mansion. I dodged his question, stepping forward to curtsy respectfully. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness." For for speaking up for me in the palace today, and also, thank you for looking after my mother when she was ill." He shook his head, his gaze gentle. "There is no need for thanks, you are worthy of it." "Official Shu," I froze, staring at him in surprise. He raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in his eyes. "You're not used to that title." I nodded slightly, a hint of awkwardness creeping over me. In truth, I rarely felt this flustered in the company of others. Even when facing the emperor himself, I knew exactly how to conduct myself with poise and propriety. Only in the crown prince's presence did I find myself constantly pausing to gauge his mood, second-guessing my every word and action. A heavy silence fell over the room. I could feel his eyes on me, warm and steady, but I had no idea how to break the awkwardness. This was so unlike me, I thought with a bitter smile. "Official Shu," he called softly. "Yes," I replied. When I looked up at him, he smiled, raising his eyebrows in amusement. "I heard you brought gifts for everyone." My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to deny it, but it would be the height of rudeness to bring gifts for everyone else and not for the crown prince, who had shown me so much kindness and care. Besides, I really had brought him a gift. "Please wait a moment, Your Royal Highness." I turned and hurried back to my room, fetching the gift I had prepared for him. He opened the box in front of me. Inside were 12 snuff bottles, each painted with a different intricate design. Imported goods were all the rage for gift-giving these days, so this present was nothing out of the ordinary, deliberately so. But he seemed to love it. He picked up each bottle, sniffed it gently, then carefully put them back in the box, placing it beside him. He looked up at me suddenly, his eyes warm with affection. "I traveled to the Jiangnan region in the middle of the year. I brought you a gift too." I stared at him in shock. He handed me an exquisitely carved wooden box. I hesitated for a moment before taking it, lifting the lid to reveal a wooden comb inside. A comb as a gift symbolized the ancient promise, tying our hair together, our hearts as one. His gift was both subtle and unmistakably direct. I stood rooted to the spot, my mind in complete turmoil, unable to find a single word to say. "Official Shu." The crown prince studied my face, letting out a soft sigh. After a long, quiet pause, he spoke again, his voice low and gentle. "You have the right to refuse me." My fingers tightened around the box, his eyes locked onto mine, warm and sincere. "I know your hesitation, your fears. I wanted to be patient, to wait, but it was too hard. I thought of you when I had this comb made. I knew I had to tell you how I feel. Your refusal would be your choice, and I would respect it. But my feelings for you, you deserve to know them too." His tone was calm, tinged with a hint of quiet helplessness. I still could not speak. "Official Shu," he called again, his voice soft and tender, like a caress. "I'm here." I looked up at him, clutching the box tightly. He stood up suddenly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair off my forehead, his touch light and gentle. I stared at him in stunned silence. He bent down slightly, tilting his head to look at me as if I were a cherished child. I stepped back instinctively, and he laughed, a warm, melodious sound that made my heart flutter. "Every time you stand in front of me." Head bowed in deference, he said softly, "I've wanted to do this, for no reason at all." My heart melted, warm and soft. "You're barely 17 or 18 years old," he murmured, his eyes filled with affection. "Yet you carry yourself with the weariness of someone twice your age. It makes my heart ache for you." No one had ever said that to me before. Everyone praised me for my maturity, my competence. Even I had never thought I needed anyone to feel sorry for me. I found myself racking my brain, recalling every moment of the past 10 years, from the age of 8 to 18, trying to pinpoint exactly what had made me grow up so quickly, so painfully. "Don't overthink it," he said, sighing again. He stepped around me, walking toward the door, his back to me. "The meaning of the comb, it's not fixed, it's defined by the person who receives it. Just like everything in this world, it only means what you choose to let it mean. With those words, he left. I traced the smooth grain of the wooden comb with my fingertips. I knew what he was trying to tell me. Whether the difference in our social status would be an insurmountable barrier, that was entirely up to me. He did not want to add to my troubles, so he had simply bared his heart to me, expressed his feelings, and then stepped back, giving me the freedom to refuse without pressure. That was the kind of man he was, always so restrained, so thoughtful, so perfect in his conduct. I put the comb back in its box, placing it carefully on my bedside table. The next day, I went to the Imperial Household Department to report for duty. I handed Chief Steward Lin a box filled with silver notes, my voice steady and sincere. Please think of me as your own daughter. When you grow old and retire, let me take care of you for the rest of your days. Chief Steward Lin's eyes glistened with tears. This old eunuch has dozens of godsons. Where would I find room for another? But to put my mind at ease, he accepted the silver notes anyway. Let me tell you something, Chief Steward Lin said, pulling me into a private room, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The selection of the Crown Princess has been put on hold. It was the Crown Prince who intervened. Did he tell you that? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. Not directly, Chief Steward Lin replied, his eyes shining with excitement, but he told the Empress that he already has someone in his heart. He said no one is to meddle in his marriage, no one at all. Chief Steward Lin was positively bursting with gossip. He suddenly stopped, turning to look at me with a knowing smile. Did you know? I just got back to the capital, I replied, feigning ignorance. How could I possibly know? My heart was racing. But I had so many things to do that I barely had time to dwell on his words. Spring vacation began on the 26th day of the 12th lunar month. By the time I finished packing up for the holiday, it was already evening. The sky outside was pitch black, and snow had started to fall again. I opened my umbrella and headed toward my shops, wanting to speak to my employees before closing time. As I walked through a narrow alley, 7 or 8 men dressed in black suddenly emerged from the shadows, surrounding me. Before I could react, a sharp pain exploded at the back of my head, and everything went black. When I woke up again, it was pitch dark all around me, with only a single oil lamp hanging above my head, casting a dim, flickering light. Who are you? I called out, spotting vague figures moving in the darkness. When one of them shifted, I asked again, my voice steady despite the fear in my heart. Why did you kidnap me? What do you want? A man's voice spoke from the shadows, low and menacing, muffled as if he were speaking through a cloth. I was ordered to take your life. My heart sank like a stone. I tried to negotiate with him, offering money, but he remained silent, clearly waiting for his final orders. Hours dragged by. From dusk until dawn, I was on the verge of collapse when the door to the room was suddenly kicked open with a loud crash. Dozens of people poured in. And through the haze of my exhaustion, I recognized the Crown Prince. Are you hurt? His voice was raw, broken, barely coherent with fear and relief. No, I replied, my voice weak. Who kidnapped me? It was Qing Yang, he said, his jaw tight with rage. Come with me. He lifted me gently into his arms, carrying me to a sedan chair, tucking a warm blanket around me as servants lifted the chair and carried me outside. Outside, we stood in a courtyard covered in snow. The ground trampled and chaotic. A crowd of people stood waiting. Leading them was Marquis Wei Yuan. Only then did I realize the truth. Princess Qingyang had hidden me in the backyard of the Marquis's mansion, knowing full well that no one would dare to search the residence of a high-ranking noble. Who would have the audacity to search the Marquis's home? Who would even think to look for me there? Your Royal Highness, this is surely a misunderstanding. Marquis Wei Yuan glanced at me nervously, stumbling over his words in his haste to explain, but the Crown Prince took 3 long strides forward, grabbing the Marquis by the neck and lifting him off the ground. What misunderstanding? The Crown Prince asked, his voice cold and deadly. Marquis Wei Yuan's feet dangled in the air as he struggled desperately. I am your uncle. How dare you? I thought you were a smart man, the Crown Prince said, his voice low and dangerous, each word sharp as a knife. You should have known what lines not to cross, what people not to touch. I stared at the Crown Prince in shock. The people of the Marquis's household fell to their knees, trembling with fear. The Crown Prince, who was always so calm, so composed, he was flying into a rage, reckless with fury, caring nothing for the consequences. 13. The Crown Prince should never have torn openly with Marquis Wei Yuan, because attacking the Marquis was tantamount to slapping the Empress Dowager in the face. Even a child off the street would have known that this was the height of foolishness, but he did not care. He ordered his soldiers to seal the gates of the Marquis's mansion, then took Marquis Wei Yuan, Princess Qingyang, and me to the palace. It was my decision to go. He asked me if I was tired, and I told him I could endure it. Good, he said, his eyes softening as he looked at me. He bent down to brush a strand of hair off my forehead, his touch gentle. Then stay close to me. I will. I nodded. I was exhausted. But I had to go. He had risked everything for me, incurring the wrath of the entire court. I could not cowardly hide at home. Princess Qingyang was terrified, her face ashen. She screamed that she had kidnapped me because I had seduced her fiancé, that I had been meeting Song Yin in the alley for a secret tryst ever since I returned to the capital. The ladies of the imperial harem stared at me, their eyes filled with shock and judgment. As if they believed I was capable of such shameless behavior. Princess Qingyang looked faintly triumphant, thinking I would lose my temper and argue with her. But I did not. I simply focused on looking weak and fragile, the picture of an innocent victim. Your Royal Highness, I said, turning to the Crown Prince, my voice trembling. This can be investigated. A flicker of amusement crossed the Crown Prince's eyes. He immediately ordered his men to launch a thorough investigation. Princess Qingyang's expression crumbled. She shrieked hysterically. There's nothing to investigate. Xu Jiao is right here. She has a mouth. Let her speak. The Empress slammed her palm on the table, her voice sharp with anger. She has lost 8 out of 10 lives from this ordeal. How do you expect her to speak? You, on the other hand, have quite the mouth on you. Should I arrange a stage for you to perform on? It was my first time meeting the Empress. She was slightly plump, her face exuding regal elegance and authority, her eyes sharp and intelligent, radiating the imposing aura of a woman who ruled the imperial harem. The Empress Dowager was no less formidable, but today she looked pale and exhausted with rage, her usual imposing presence completely gone. The investigation was swift and thorough. The truth, of course, was deeply humiliating for Princess Qingyang. In the end, the Emperor ordered Marquis Wei Yuan to be flogged 80 times and placed under house arrest for 6 months. Princess Qingyang was stripped of her title as punishment. The Emperor turned to me, his voice kind. Are you satisfied with this verdict? I nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. The Empress Dowager was helped to her feet by her attendants. She stopped in front of me, looking down her nose at me with a cold, haughty expression. Xu Jiao, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Yes. Your Royal Highness, I replied, curtsying deeply. This common woman pays her respects to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager stared at me for a long moment, a bitter smile twisting her lips. She turned to the Empress, her voice laced with sarcasm. You are lucky indeed, to have found such a clever ally. The Empress folded her arms, tilting her chin up in a gesture of quiet defiance as she curtsied. You are lucky too, Your Royal Highness. After all, we are all family. The Empress Dowager flicked her sleeve in anger, turning on her heel and storming away, attended by her eunuchs and maids. The Empress turned to me, winking playfully. Come rest in my palace. How could I dare refuse? The Empress glanced back at the Emperor and the Crown Prince, her voice sharp with authority. You two come with me too. The imperial physician examined me and declared that I was unharmed, needing only rest to recover fully. After washing up, I lay down on a soft couch. Sitting across from me were the most honored couple in the great Zhou dynasty, the Emperor and the Empress. The Crown Prince sat beside me. I kept my eyes half closed, still feigning weakness and exhaustion. The Empress ranted and raved about Marquis Wei Yuan's audacity. The Crown Prince said nothing, once again the calm, composed man he usually was. The Emperor kept his head down, turning a jade archer's ring over and over in his hands, a faint smile playing on his lips. Shu Jiao. The Empress suddenly asked, breaking the silence. I'm here, I replied, looking up at her. The Crown Prince also turned to her, his eyes dark with disapproval. She has just been through a terrible ordeal. Please speak softly. The Empress shot the Crown Prince a sharp glare, but she lowered her voice anyway. Never mind, she said, waving a hand dismissively. I won't say anything else. This is your business, you two figure it out yourselves. I stared at her in surprise. The Empress was nothing like the ruthless, calculating woman I had heard rumors about. The Crown Prince looked utterly delighted. He immediately ordered servants to carry me back to my residence, taking his leave and hurrying me out of the palace of earthly tranquility. As we left, I faintly heard the Empress calling for her attendants to bring her wine. I smiled to myself, a lightness in my heart I had not felt in a long time. All the gloom and darkness that had clouded my mind seemed to vanish in an instant. When I returned home, my mother burst into tears. Shortly after, Xu Mingming called out my name as she burst into the room, sobbing loudly. She cried and ranted until she had no more tears left, but when she wiped her nose and looked up, she saw the Crown Prince sitting quietly by the bed. She clapped a hand over her mouth, her eyes red and swollen like a rabbit's, and then she started hiccuping violently. Hic, I should go home now. Mingming blushed bright red and fled the room like a gust of wind. The Crown Prince and I exchanged a glance, then burst out laughing together. She is naive and kind-hearted, Your Royal Highness. Please don't take offense, I said apologetically. The Crown Prince's gaze lingered on the wooden box on my bedside table for a moment before he looked away and nodded. Rest well. I will come to see you again tomorrow. I said that would be nice, and asked my mother to see him out. The room fell silent. I leaned back against the headboard, twirling a wooden comb in my hand, my mind replaying the image of the Crown Prince flying into a rage in the Golden Hall earlier that day. In truth, he hadn't needed to go to such lengths for me. The Empress' harem consisted only of the Empress and Consort Yu. Consort Yu had no sons, only 2 princesses. The Crown Prince's only younger brother was his full-blooded sibling, and he was merely 8 years old. Thus, the political storms stirred up by the Empress Dowager and the Marquis of Wei Yuan's mansion were always well within his control, but still, he had chosen to stand up for me. I pulled the quilt over my face and forced myself to fall asleep. I rested for the next 2 days. The Crown Prince came to visit me every day at noon, never staying longer than necessary. On New Year's Eve, the entire Song family, father, mother, and son, came to our house together. Song Yin's mother suggested that we celebrate the new year as one family. My mother stood at the front door, a kitchen knife in her hand, and sneered coldly. Wang Shi, if you don't want your face anymore, I'll be happy to help you cut it off. Song Yin's mother's face turned a mottled shade of blue and red with anger and embarrassment. Song Yin and I stood in the alleyway as usual, talking. He begged me to help him. As long as you say a single word, both the Emperor and the Crown Prince will listen to you. Please help me, will you? His wife had been placed under house arrest. He had been ostracized by his colleagues, and now he was desperate to be transferred out of the Hanlin Academy. Song Yin, I said coldly, if I were you, I would never have come here again. I turned to go back inside, But he grabbed me by the sleeve. "Jiao Jiao, I'm willing to divorce her. I'll marry you as my legal wife." I turned to look at him. Just then, the crown prince came walking slowly down the alley, followed by a line of eunuchs carrying New Year gifts. His cold, distant gaze fell on Song Yin's hand, which was still clutching my sleeve. Song Yin fell to his knees in terror. I bowed respectfully to the crown prince, then led the eunuchs carrying the gifts back into the mansion first. When I returned, I stood behind the half-closed wooden door and listened to their conversation. "She is just a merchant's daughter," Song Yin said, his voice trembling with desperation. "If your royal highness marries her as your crown princess, it will violate the ancestral laws and traditions." The crown prince replied calmly, his voice ringing with quiet resolve. "Once I marry her as my wife, will that not create a new precedent for the ancestral laws to follow?" I knew that Song Yin must have been utterly shocked, just as I was. I opened the door. Both the crown prince and Song Yin turned to look at me. I said to the crown prince, "It's cold outside. Please come inside to talk." The crown prince smiled, his steps suddenly lightening as he walked toward me. I met Song Yin's gaze one last time. His face was pale and haggard with despair. Then I closed the door firmly behind me. 14. The crown prince stopped in the middle of the path. "Xiao Jingyi," he said, looking at me with a soft smile in his eyes. I lifted my head to look up at him, my cheeks flushing slightly. I knew his given name, Xiao Yi, and his courtesy name, Jingyi. His hand rested gently on top of my head, his fingers brushing my hair softly. "What should I call you?" he asked. "Shu Jiao," I replied, knowing full well that he was asking the question deliberately, my cheeks growing warmer. I added, "Your Royal Highness may call me Jiao Jiao, if you wish." He let out a soft hum of assent, then walked ahead of me with his hands clasped behind his back. But suddenly stopped again. I looked at him in confusion. He turned to face me, his tone soft and tender, full of affection. "Jiao Jiao." I smiled at the sound of my name on his lips. He called it again, then bent down slightly, bringing his face closer to mine. A faint, clean scent wafted from his person. "I often hear others call you by that name," he said, his voice carrying a hint of quiet jealousy. "Even Master Lin has called you Jiao Jiao in front of me. Only I have never been allowed to do so." I hung my head, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. In previous years, our house had always been bustling with activity on New Year's Eve. Only last year had it been cold and quiet, but this year, it was full of life and laughter once more. My mother, in particular, was rushed off her feet, bustling back and forth between the kitchen and the dining hall, shouting orders at the servants at the top of her voice. Even the cooks and maids who were being scolded were not the least bit upset. They all grinned from ear to ear, vying with each other to cook the most delicious and satisfying dishes possible. The crown prince insisted that my mother take the seat of honor at the dinner table. After a few polite protests, she sat down happily, looking positively beaming with pride, quite clearly relishing her role as the respected elder of the family. "Are you sure it's all right for you not to return to the palace for the new year, Your Royal Highness?" my mother asked, personally serving him food from her own kitchen. The eunuch assigned to taste the food first to ensure it was safe was breaking out in a cold sweat, but the crown prince shot him a glance, and he quickly bowed his head and retreated. The crown prince looked at me, his smile holding a hint of deep meaning. "Both father and mother know exactly what I am doing here." Pride and joy shone brightly in my mother's eyes and across her face. I didn't have the heart to dampen her spirits by saying anything to stop her. After dinner, I accompanied the crown prince to the front gate of the mansion. He asked me if I would like to go to the palace tomorrow to pay my New Year respects. "Would that be appropriate?" I asked him. "If Jiao Jiao wishes to go, then it is appropriate," he replied. I nodded my head in agreement. I walked him to the carriage. He climbed aboard, then lifted the curtain and looked back at me. In the darkness of the night, The place where he sat was bathed in warm light, and his gaze was equally warm and gentle. My heart swelled with sudden emotion, and I took a few more steps toward the carriage, but he immediately climbed down again, walking toward me to meet me halfway. "What is it?" he asked. Looking down at me with a soft expression, I suddenly felt shy and embarrassed about my impulsive action. I composed myself and shook my head. "Take care on your journey back to the palace, Your Royal Highness." He seemed to want to brush my hair again, but he restrained himself, turning to climb back into the carriage. "It's cold outside. Go back inside," he said softly. I nodded and watched him leave. That night, I had many vivid dreams. I dreamed that the censors in the Golden Hall were denouncing me for my lowly birth. I dreamed that the Crown Prince was being reviled as a tyrant who would go down in history as the worst of all time. I woke up at dawn, watching as the sky outside the window slowly turned from black to gray, then to a pale, bright blue. I couldn't help but laugh at myself, laughing at my own timidity, my own cowardice. After washing up, I was in the middle of choosing a dress to wear when Qinghe rushed in to tell me that the Crown Prince had arrived. "He's sitting in the courtyard waiting for you," Qinghe said, grabbing my wrist, her eyes red with excitement. "His Royal Highness has brought an invitation. He wants to invite Mother to come to the palace with you as well." I was filled with surprise. "Whose invitation is it?" Qinghe's voice was trembling with emotion as she replied. "It was written personally by Her Majesty the Empress." I lowered my eyes, my own eyes growing warm with tears. He had gone to such painstaking lengths to make everything so proper and dignified for me. I was deeply touched. I thought to myself, even if he were to take other wives and concubines in the future, at this moment, he was well worth my wholehearted devotion. "Help me fix my hair," I said to Qinghe. I dressed in my most magnificent formal attire, then took my mother's hand and walked into the cunning palace together. Both the Empress Dowager and the Empress were sitting in the palace. My mother was about to kneel down to pay her respects, but the head lady-in-waiting of the cunning palace hurried forward to help her up.
"Mind is stuck at the age of 3, you," Shu Qin gasped, staring at me in outrage. "You came to the Crown Prince's mansion to beg for his help," I continued, my voice cold and sharp. "Do you truly believe His Royal Highness is kind-hearted enough to assist Junior Official Song? Or are you hoping to stir up old feelings and make me help him out of sentimentality? Tell me." Shu Qin's body went rigid, all the color draining from her face as if she had seen a ghost. "From now on," I said, my tone icy, "if you dare to spout such nonsense again, I will not hesitate to take action. I will set an example for everyone, to show them exactly which way the wind is blowing, and point them toward the right path." I turned my gaze to Song Yin, my eyes cold and unforgiving. "Junior Official Song, surely you understand these things, even if your wife does not." "Yes, Your Highness," Song Yin replied, his voice trembling with fear. "I know I am guilty. We take our leave now." He dragged Shu Qin toward the door. She looked back at me, her eyes filled with tears of bitterness and grievance. Anger bubbled up inside me, but suddenly, a warm hand rested gently on top of my head, stroking my hair softly. I turned to look at the Crown Prince. He was smiling at me, his eyes warm and full of affection. I smiled back, playfully chiding him. "Your Royal Highness has such a good temper." He laced his fingers through mine, pressing my hand to his cheek and rubbing it gently against his skin. He said nothing, just smiled at me, his eyes brimming with tender love. The anger in my heart melted away. It felt silly to be angry over such trivial matters. I mimicked his gesture, reaching up to pinch his cheek lightly. By the end of that year, I was with child. The following August, I gave birth to a healthy son. The delivery went smoothly. But the Crown Prince fell seriously ill shortly afterward. The imperial physicians said it was due to excessive worry and stress. I knew the truth ever since I had become pregnant. He had spent every day consulting with midwives and doctors, learning everything there was to know about childbirth. The more he learned, the more he worried. He forbade me from having any more children. But my health was robust. The very next year, I found myself pregnant again. The Crown Prince lost several pounds in weight. He had a small bed set up beside mine, waking up at the slightest movement of my body during the night to watch over me, making sure I was comfortable. Thankfully, the second delivery was also smooth. When our second son was born, the Crown Prince ran a fever for 2 whole days. I teased him, saying he looked like he was the one who had gone through childbirth. It was not that I particularly loved having children, but he was the heir to the throne. And he had refused to take any other concubines or wives. I knew I had to endure the hardships for him, so 2 years later, I made the decision to have a third child. This time, I gave birth to a daughter. I made up my mind that I would have no more children after this. The Crown Prince let out a genuine sigh of relief, his shoulders relaxing as if a heavy burden had been lifted from them. When our eldest son turned 12, the Emperor passed away, and the Crown Prince ascended the throne. I stood beside him on the high platform of the Golden Hall, looking down at the sea of officials kowtowing before us. My heart was filled with a complex mix of emotions. I thought back to the first day I had taken over the tea business, when the shopkeeper had bullied me, and I had hidden alone in my carriage, crying my eyes out. I remembered the day I had opened my first new shop, sitting in my carriage and drinking wine to celebrate, my heart bursting with pride and joy. I recalled the day of the Shaanxi festival, when I had overheard Song Yin telling Shu Qin that I was just an ordinary woman, nothing compared to her beauty and grace. I had sat in my carriage, my heart heavy with sadness and disappointment. I thought of the day I had followed the Crown Prince's carriage back home, carrying the imperial plaque, the streets lined with cheering crowds, the flowers bloom unchanged year after year, and the man I love, he has never changed either, Your Majesty. I said softly. He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with infinite tenderness and love. The flowers inside the wall are beautiful, I told him. The man I love, he has always been by my side. Xiao Jingyi. Epilogue. I was named Crown Prince when I was only 3 years old. Every day, someone would tell me what a Crown Prince should do, and what he should never do. I always took my duties seriously, doing everything that was expected of me. Everyone has responsibilities to bear in this life. My father did, and so did I, and so did Xu Jiao. The first time I saw her was at the academy. She was wearing a plain, simple dress, tall and slender, with delicate, elegant features. But I knew at a single glance that she was unlike any other woman I had ever met. It was not just her beauty, it was the poise and dignity in her every gesture, an air of quiet confidence I had never seen before. That was why, when Chief Steward Lin hinted at his little scheme to bring her into the palace's service, I was happy to go along with it. I watched her sitting in the pavilion, speaking to Qingyang with calm composure, neither arrogant nor servile. Even when she was clearly furious, she maintained her grace and dignity. At that moment, I thought to myself, if she were a man, I would definitely recruit her to serve by my side. She was so much like me, clear-headed about her own situation and responsibilities, handling her gains and losses with calm rationality. The second time I saw her, she did not even notice me. She was returning a gift to Yang Ling. I was sitting with the academy director, drinking tea, when I caught sight of her. The silly quarrel between the young men had embarrassed and angered her. I could see the undisguised disappointment in her eyes. That man named Song Yin, he did not deserve her. The thought popped into my head unbidden, surprising even myself, but try as I might, I could not push it away. Like the grass that sprouts in spring, it grew rapidly, spreading and flourishing until by the third time I saw her, it had filled my entire heart. Green and lush, she had subtly shown me her capabilities and ambition. How could I not understand her intentions? The fourth time I saw her was after a long while. I knew I should not have gone to see her, but I could not resist the pull of my heart, longing to be close to her, even just for a moment. She stood there with her head bowed, and all I wanted to do was not take the account books from her, but to stroke her hair and ask her if she was tired. She must have been exhausted, because being outstanding is never easy. That day, I led her along the corridor outside the palace halls, her soft footsteps echoing behind me. The world around us was quiet and still. I wished we could walk like this forever. I was not myself that day, doing many things that were out of character, making her uncomfortable. She was a little resistant to my advances. I could not bear to see her troubled, so I made the decision to suppress my feelings, to hide them deep in my heart. I endured, month after month, but when she returned to the capital, I finally could not hold back any longer. I had overestimated my self-control. People often say that love is a torment. When I left her house that day, the wooden comb in my hand, I could barely maintain my usual poise and dignity. When I heard that she was missing, my heart felt as if it had been crushed in a vice. All thoughts of propriety, restraint, of what a crown prince should or should not do, they vanished without a trace. When I grabbed Marquis Wei Yuan by the neck, I wanted nothing more than to strangle him to death. It was she who stopped me. I realized that she was the one who had suffered the most. I could not let her bear the blame for seducing the crown prince and clouding his judgment. I could not bear it. She had already endured so much hardship. On New Year's Eve, I was talking to Song Yin in the alley when she opened the door and called out to me, "It's cold outside. Come inside to talk." Listen to her. She said come inside to talk as if it were our home, walking along the path beside her. I felt like a young boy experiencing the pangs of first love, eager to tell her my name, to share every part of myself with her. She must have thought me childish and silly, but she had no idea how much I had already held back for her sake. The road to making her my wife was not an easy one, but I knew it would happen eventually. I was willing to negotiate and compromise with the court about my marriage, not for my own sake, but to protect her reputation. The world has always been harsh on women. They would not dare to call me a fool blinded by love, but they would not hesitate to label her a seductress, a femme fatale who had led the crown prince astray. I wanted her to marry me with dignity, to stand by my side as an equal. She was a woman I deeply respected, and she deserved the respect of everyone in the world. She endured so much hardship to bear my children, yet she never once complained about the pain or tiredness. She told me that the flowers inside the wall were beautiful. I had confined her to the inner palace, binding her hands and feet, preventing her from achieving all the great things she was capable of. Yet she was the one comforting me. My Jiaojia, she was like the moon, calm, serene, and graceful, just like the moon. Song Yin, a epilogue. Jiaojia was irreplaceable in my life. She was the one who took care of me, every single day, the ice to cool me in summer, the charcoal to warm me in winter. She arranged everything with meticulous care and attention. I loved her, with all my heart. I never once doubted that love. That love was etched deep into my bones. One of the reasons I worked so hard at my studies was to earn her a noble title, a rank worthy of her. I wanted her to live like other noble ladies, elegant, dignified, and carefree, spending her days in the comfort of our home. But the path to success was a difficult one. As I grew older, I began to understand just how hard it would be. All my classmates had powerful family backgrounds and connections to rely on. Even Yang Ling, his father was a fourth-rank official, from a family of scholars with a long and distinguished history. I wanted a patron too, someone who could help me climb the ladder of success. By a stroke of luck, I met Princess Qingyang. She was attracted to me, but I did not love her. She was not as beautiful or intelligent as Jiao Jiao, not as understanding or thoughtful, but she was a princess. She introduced me to her elder brother, and through her influence, I even became a disciple of elder statesman Xu, the Grand Secretary himself. I was so excited that I could not sleep for several nights. I told Jiao Jiao about it, and she was happy for me. I knew she would be. Jiao Jiao was a smart woman. She would understand that everything I did, every sacrifice I made, was for our future together. That was why I thought I could persuade her to wait for me for 3 years. In 3 years, I would be able to take her into my household as my concubine. We loved each other so deeply. She was always so sensible and understanding. I was certain she would agree, but she refused me. I could not understand why. We had promised to love each other forever, to spend our entire lives together. Why couldn't she endure this small bit of hardship for me? But her refusal was absolute, final. My heart shattered into a million pieces. She must have been acting out of anger, out of momentary passion. I told myself that once she calmed down, she would see reason. She would understand that what I said made sense. She was just a merchant's daughter. After all, no matter how successful she became, that was the highest she could ever rise. no matter how famous Mistress Shu became, she would never earn the sincere respect of the world. I left her alone, willing to wait for her to come to her senses. She was heartbroken, of course she was. That was why she kept leaving the capital. Rarely coming back. She did achieve some honors, even receiving that imperial plaque. But how did she end up being appointed as a third-rank official, taking charge of the imperial household department? I did not even have an official rank yet. How could she possibly be above me? We had a deal. I was supposed to earn her a noble title. I panicked. I wanted to warn her that a woman rising so high would become the target of everyone's jealousy and criticism. It would ruin her reputation. And when she finally entered my household, Princess Qingyang would surely make her life miserable. But she told me to get lost. Sure enough, Princess Qingyang tried to bully her, but why was the crown prince there? My heart was seized with a terrible panic. Because the affection in the crown prince's eyes when he looked at her was completely undisguised. The thing I had feared the most had come to pass. The crown prince wanted Jiao Jiao. She had refused to be a concubine, hadn't she? I had never imagined that the crown prince would actually want to marry her, to take her as his legitimate crown princess with all the proper betrothal rites and ceremonies. How could she possibly be the crown princess? Jiao Jiao was just a merchant's daughter. Her becoming the crown princess was a direct violation of our ancestral laws and traditions. I wanted to warn the crown prince, to tell him that he had been completely blinded by his love for her. But the crown prince was determined to have his way, turning a deaf ear to all objections. Jiao Jiao really did marry him. I stood by the side of the road, watching her through the sedan chair's beaded curtain, her graceful figure, her dignified bearing, her poise and elegance. My Jiao Jiao, she had not acted on a moment's impulse. She was really going to marry someone else. What should I do? What on earth should I do? We had clearly promised to stay together for the rest of our lives. We had clearly sworn that our love would last forever. How could I ever win her back? I didn't know. My heart was in such excruciating pain that I felt as if I were dying. I went to find Yang Ling. We drank until we were completely drunk. Yang Ling pointed at my nose and sneered at me. He said he should thank me. Because it was all thanks to a conceited fool like me, someone who had taken a precious pearl and treated it like a worthless fish's eye, that Jiao Jiao had been able to become the crown princess, that she had been given the chance to fully display her abilities and talents. Yang Ling laughed uncontrollably. I buried my head in my hands and knelt down on the ground. All the memories of our past together flashed before my eyes, one by one. Was it my fault? You're not wrong, Yang Ling said. His laugh cruel and hateful. You're just not worthy of her. No, that wasn't true. That couldn't be true. From your intelligence to your vision, you are completely unworthy of her, Yang Ling said, his voice cold and cutting. I lay down on the cold flagstones. Snowflakes fell on my face, on my closed eyes. It felt as if my heart had been torn out of my chest, leaving an empty, gaping hole that the wind howled through. I was so cold. Jiao Jiao, I'm so cold. Every winter before. It was always you who prepared the charcoal for me. Winters without you are so unbearable. How am I supposed to live the rest of my life without you? I regret everything. Just look back at me one more time. Please, just one glance. Jiao Jiao, I was wrong. Please come back to me, please.